Extended business hours with a 24-hour client support center.
Welcome back to Captains of Industry. Still with me in studio, Stephen Saad, Group CEO, Aspen Pharmacare. Now, you've become something of a social entrepreneur. You've recently raised money for a pediatric hospital, cycling 240 Ks from Ceres to Sutherland and raising 10 million rand. Was it a tough journey?
It was the toughest journey that I've ever embarked on. I mean, just the training for it was quite unbelievable. And it was all off-road, and you had to do it in one day. And there was a cut-off. It was 1:30 in the morning. So we started at 7 in the morning, and it was 1:30 the next morning. So,
is this something you do on a regular basis, the mountain biking?
I do it on a regular basis, but rather than a social thing, like a couple of hours. But this took me just a few seconds short of 16 hours. But I think what made it really tough was I had been sponsored by the kilometre. So, and it was a big number. By the time I added it all up, it was something like 40,000 rand a kilometre. So I knew I couldn't stop. And I think that psychologically was absolutely exhausting, on top of the fact that I'd never ever done even half this distance in my life before. So it was really exhausting, but the end justified.
And this was a perfect example of a private-public partnership, because the Minister of Health joined you in this game.
I mean, isn't that wonderful? I mean, to have a Minister of Health, he was in Angola, he arrived, he said, "No, Steve, I believe in this, I'm going to support you." And he came out and he did the first few kilometres with me, and it was great, just to show absolute support and solidarity on it. And so I'm hoping we're building it up now. It's going to get a bit more air, but I'm hoping that we've started something that we can now build on.
So you're going to do more cycling on this front?
No. I'd rather just pay the money. But you know what? It's much easier to have paid the money. It was to actually have made the sacrifice in time and effort and pain that makes it all worthwhile. And really, it's something we really believe strongly in, and it's something we'd like to really grow.
I want to pick up on this public-private partnership and whether this lays the foundation for more of the same going forward in the business sense. Because that's the way that we are going to conquer health problems on the continent and in LATAM and Asia Pacific.
Yes, and I think that people always talk about public-private partnerships and PPPs and all the rest, but the reality is there isn't a lot of trust between the parties. I mean, that's the truth, and everyone sits and sees these glib statements. The reality, there isn't a huge amount of trust, and both parties need each other, because if you look at what you're trying to achieve in healthcare across, you simply don't have enough resource. You can't have the same number of doctors qualifying now as it did 15 or 20 years ago. There's X million more people in this country. So hopefully we're going to sit together. We've been at the forefront of what we call a social compact with health, and it's fairly far advanced now, in which the private sector have got together, and we're going to work together as a compact with the public sector to try and assist and aid where we can the public sector. But it's
is the intent there, the real intent from the public sector?
There is real intent from the public sector, for sure. I mean, and the public sector saying this is where we need help. And the help really is, a lot of it's around skills and HR skills and building up. You need to make sure that your hospitals are administered properly. You can't ask doctors to work in an environment when you've got an administrator who might give a tender better than the next administrator. You need administrators who are competent. At the end of the day, people always complain about corruption. For me, the bigger issue is incompetence. If you're going to deliver a service and you're going to be corrupt, that's bad, but at least the service is there. But if you're going to be corrupt and not deliver the service, you've got a huge problem. So those are key issues that we need to develop, and hopefully are going to be able to contribute, is to be able to contribute to the skills base and training that skills base to make sure that there is delivery within the public
Talking
sector.
About competence and skills, a number of analysts use your management team as a shining example of how management teams should work. So you've obviously surrounded yourself with the right people. How do you go about that hiring process? I know it's a question you get asked all the time.
I think we've got the greatest team beyond even management teams. And I say it, and everyone sort of says it, but the reality is I have many multinational. I had one now that brought 7 people from the States to come and look at the factories. I don't walk around with anyone that can question anybody on the floor they want to talk on, and they always come back and say the same things to me. We cannot believe the level of confidence from the guys that run the machines so a lot of it is really pride in what you do. Remember, everyone started from small. They didn't have FDA qualifications. We all had to be groomed. No one was brought from the outside. So it's really been a good team approach. In terms of management, I've often looked at the management and I look at our team and I say, well, what do they have in common? This one's good at finance, this one's good at sales. They've got different personalities. He's an introvert, she's an extrovert. It's, what is it? And
what is the commonality? Something that makes us a super person?
The only commonality I've found is detail, attention to detail. We've got people that really concentrate on the detail in the area, and they are therefore able to come up with a plan that's got limited chance of going wrong because they understand exactly all the moving parts in there. So details are a very important part of even running a small business. An entrepreneur, you need to know hold your expenses, but most important know the detail of your business or what drives it.
I'm going to push you even further on this fact, because in the hiring process, how do you know whether someone is good at the detail?
It's very, very, very hard. And the hiring process, I wish I could tell you we've been hugely successful in the hiring process. We've been a lot more successful in developing talent within our business. So most of the top people within our business, in the South African business, have come from within our ranks. So we've had lots of spectacular failures of people we've brought in high positions. So I wish I could tell you there's a magic in this hiring process, but I haven't been as successful. The magic we've had is we are very decisive. So because there's absolute clarity and objectives, we know exactly what we want to do. I had one of the multinationals ask me in America to speak to their people, to ask them what's the difference. And I said the difference between us and this particular multinational is that we'll give you a yes or a no. If we give you maybe, it's because we actually pausing because we think it's tactically right to say maybe. Whereas in the bigger companies and the bureaucracies I've seen, they say maybe because it's a politically correct thing to say. Because if you don't make a mistake, well, then you don't fall off the corporate ladder. In our place, you will fall right off the ladder if you you don't say those. You make your calls. What we say is mistakes are acceptable, just don't repeat them.
You are speaking my language. You are a fool if you repeat the same mistakes.
Yeah. So it's yes or no, and if you choose maybe, maybe is a decision in itself. It's not going to get you a politically correct decision at Aspen. And
take accountability. That must be the other end of the spectrum when it comes to decision making.
Correct. So we take, the problem is, as your business becomes bigger, there is a tendency for it to become more bureaucratic. You put in more controls. What we've tried to do is to break it down into smaller businesses. And if you give 10 people 10 to look after, they might miss the 10 by 9.5 or whatever. But when you add it all up, you'll get very close to your 100. If you give one person the 100 to look after, don't be disappointed if you get to 80.
Still with this people issue, you say you've hired some external people into high-profile positions within the group, and they've been spectacular failures.
Yes.
How long has it taken you to realize that they are spectacular failures, and what remedial action do you take? How quickly do you move when you know you've made a mistake in the appointment?
Aspen is quite a high-performance business, quite high. It's not necessarily an easy business to fit in. You're not going to come in there it's a performance culture, and you'll quickly work out if you fit and don't fit. I like to give people 1 year. Within a year, I can almost tell. I can often tell a lack of performance before that. You can just see the look in the eyes. And then we do move very quickly. I
was recently speaking to Alan Knott Craig, the CEO of Cell-C, on the same program, Captains of Industry. And he's got a work ethic where he arrives at the office early in the morning and he leaves late in the evening, sometimes up to 9 o'clock. And I said to him, well, do you expect the same from people who work for you? And he said, absolutely, I do. And yourself?
No. Work when you have to work. I look for absolute balance in your life. I don't want people who are chained to their desks or feel chained to their desks. They must know what works for them. But I like to have people in the business that know how to manage their home life, their social life, their work life. There needs to be balance in life.
Is that a reality, though? Because the more that I speak to captains of industry and people in high-profile positions, the balance element seems to be more and more of a myth.
Look, there are times where there aren't balance. Of course there are. But I always say, and this is probably a contradictory statement, but you need to obsessively look for balance. Because people, the focus is critical in life. And to be a little bit obsessive can also help. But you need to also put your obsession in the right place. You don't want to wake up one day and say, I've been chained to this desk for 12 years and I've got no friends, my kids don't recognize me, or maybe you're happy with that. But personally, I'm not happy with that. And I always, when I talk to the Aspen teams, I tell them I'm looking for people who have balance in their life.
How do you define balance? Perhaps I can get a little bit more detail out of you.
I don't want somebody chained to the desk because they feel chained to the desk. If that gives that person balance, if someone says, I want to be chained to this desk 24 hours a day because I love my job so much and this gives me balance, fine, I look at it, but I am suspicious why someone would want to do that. I'd look very closely as to what other problems they've got that they want to stay chained to their desk for that period. But I certainly don't expect it. Yes, there are times when we have to work really, really hard. I mean, we might work from right through the night if that's what is required, but it can't be the status quo. It's not sustainable, and I don't think it's fair.
What does your diary look like from Monday to Friday on an average week?
I travel a little bit, but on an average week, what I try not do, Bronwyn, is, because it's a real risk, is to clog your diary with appointments. People come in and see you. So I'm really, really fussy about who I see and don't see. And I know it doesn't go down very well with analysts, etc., because I'm impossible to get hold of. But I always tell them, you just had to buy and sell me. I'm much better off, you've already got shares in Aspen, rather let me have meetings with my management team. So I spend a lot of time on strategic opportunities, and I only work on 5 or 10 things maximum. 5 things that I need to push within the business, so things that are either have got real upside or real problems, and inorganic opportunities, because there are a lot of acquisitive opportunities for Aspen and lots of relationships that we can manage. So I like to be at the forefront of managing relationships with the multinationals, for example, who are very important partners for us.
You say you travel, and obviously with the globalization of your group, that has become more and more frequent. How does that translate into this quest for balance? Doesn't it just throw things out of kilter?
Well, when I could see what was coming my way, because it sort of slowly evolved, the globalization, or quickly evolved actually, is what I did was I put in 2 video conference facilities, and so I've got these big screens, they're huge screens, one which you can put a presentation on, and 2 you can see the faces. And it's very important to see people's faces, because funny thing on a telephone, when someone doesn't want to tell you something and they're looking down, you can't necessarily hear it in the voice, but you can see it on the video conference. So
you need to eyeball the person on the other
correct.
side.
So that's been a key in determining travel and travel requirements. I actually travel very little really for someone, and I mean if I travel, and I know if you talk to a person on the street it might be a lot, but 6 times a year, once every 2 months, 3-4 days. And
that sounds pretty balanced. How do you define success?
Success, I think if you can get all that balance right and you can laugh easily and often, you've got balance and you're successful. I don't think success is defined by monetary values. I think success is defined, you've each got your own ideas of what's successful. Some people want to be the richest people in the world, some people want to make a contribution to society. For me, it's if I'm laughing easily and often, I've got balance.
Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, chatting to you in studio. We've come to the end of this week's edition of Captains of Industry. Until next time, it's a goodbye, and thank you for watching.